Chiasmus is a literary structure widely used in ancient Hebrew and Egyptian texts, in which the grammatical concepts of the first half of the sentence or structure are reversed in the second half, creating an A-B-B-A pattern. Its use is possibly to create symmetry, emphasize a contrast, or make text easier to memorize. The name derives from the Greek letter chi, which is X-shaped, visually representing how the words and ideas cross over each other in the sentence or structure. Greetings, folks. This is Book of Mormon Chiasmus. Today we'll be talking about Alma Chapter 41, verses 9 through 13. So on the screen, there's a chiasmus down below, and from verses 9 and 10, there might be a chiasmus formation there. I've kind of indented it as if it might be there, but I just put a little A and an A prime, a B and a B prime, a C and a C prime. So the concepts of sin and offense are at the top, and sin and wickedness are at the bottom, with restoration in the middle. So it could be that that's chiasmus, or it could just be that they're making three statements twice with either simple synonymous parallelism or simple synthetic parallelism. Both happen throughout many of these chapters. Now, I will say that Alma chapter 36 through 42 are different than many other parts of the Book of Mormon. These are discourses written from Alma the Younger to his sons, and they are all highly stylized. They are written in Hebrew poetic forms. They use all kinds of different forms. And so, like I said, it's different than much of the rest of the Book of Mormon in just how stylized it is. So we're going to look at these areas. So in the top, in verse 9, so I have in gray highlighted the idea of my son 3 times, because I have noticed that it seems in the Book of Mormon they use these statements to kind of break apart thought processes or ideas. Remember, they did not have any punctuation in either Hebrew nor, I think, Egyptian as well. And so they have to break up the thought with a statement at the beginning of the end, and that's called inclusio. But in a chiasmus structure, that's a form of parallelism, where you state things once and then you invert that statement coming back. So you see my son 3 different times. So it could be that there's one little block up above and then another little block from 11 to 13. Or, they could all be sort of mashed together. But anyhow, I've just noticed that when they say my son or for behold or now behold, often it's a break between concepts. So in verse 9, you see they're stating something twice. Do not risk one more offense against your God on the points of doctrine, which you have hitherto risked to commit sin. So sin adds a little bit more on offense. And so by stating this twice, he's re-emphasizing the idea. And in general, Hebrew parallel poetry is all about stating things more than once. Isaiah does it all the time. Literally, in Isaiah, he's like saying every single thing twice. So this is just how they think, how they operate. And so we're going to look at that, some of that here. So in verse 10, do not suppose, because it has been spoken concerning restoration, that ye shall be restored. Just a double repetition of the word. From sin to happiness, behold, I say unto you, wickedness never was happiness. So sin is a match to wickedness. Happiness is a match to happiness. It's the same word. And in the top part, you have sin, offense, sin, and wickedness. And if you're looking at that, offense and wickedness could be kind of on the outside of a chiasmus, then sin and sin in, and then the double idea of restoration could be in the middle, and then framing on the outside with my son. I don't know if that's the case, but it's also, these are good simple synonymous parallelisms because they state things twice within these different concepts. So then we get to another chiasmus from verse 11 to 13. Again, I've kind of framed the outside with the idea of my son. It may be that they use those in the outside chiasmus terms, but they may start with the B terms as well. It's hard to know for sure. I like the A's, so that's the way I did it. So in green, you can see highlighted state of nature at the top, and then you get 3 different states of it down below. You have natural state, unnatural state, state opposite to its nature. So those are definitely placed kind of on the outside of the concept down there. The bottom might be another little chiasmus. Notice from B to A, I guess I need to put a B prime there, to A prime. you got these little markers. I put a little A, a little B, a little C, and a little B, and a little A, kind of reversing it out again, to show that it could be framed by, in pink, the meaning of the word restoration on the outside of both of this. And then they're talking about something that is in a natural state, and then contrasting that with unnatural state in the middle. So it's possible there's another little chiasmus there, but they could also just be stating things more than once. So I kind of highlighted that there. So in the middle of this chiasmus, starting with the B, so I talked about the state of nature, marked in green, and then in the C terms, I have put carnal in red and contrary to the nature of happiness um, there. And then one more term in, I marked state. So kind of notice going into the chiasmus says, in a carnal state, and working out of the chiasmus, they are in a state contrary to the nature of happiness. So that reversion of thinking in terms is part of what happens in this concept of chiasmus, is that you just reverse the order of the term. So I've highlighted the word state in blue, carnal and contrary to the nature of happiness in red, so you can really pick it apart and see the reverse order of the terms. So then in the middle, you have two just couplet terms. In E, it says they are in the gall of bitterness, they are in the bonds of iniquity. This is kind of like a simple synonymous statement in there. They repeating in the both times. Bitterness and iniquity both kind of say the same thing, adding a little bit more to that. Gall, I don't know if that's like septic sewage or acid or something. Bonds of iniquity means you're chained down. And so they're not saying exactly the same thing, but they're phrases that do belong together. I think there's other times that I see these in the scriptures. So a nice little doublet of, or a couplet in the first E section, and then the E prime section. It says, notice I highlighted in green, they, in the other green, without God and contrary to the nature of God. So there's a double repetition of God, double repetition of they, and the idea of being without God or contrary to the nature of God are both stating the same thing. So a nice little double statement right there in the middle. Even though they don't say the exact same thing in E and E prime, it is a doubling up of two terms in E, a doubling up of two terms in E prime, that kind of form this idea of being a carnal state is in a state opposite of a state of God. So then he kind of works back out of it. Like I said, the terms match. He's describing the idea of being restored, restoration. And I should mention that the next, starting in verse 13 to the end of the chapter, is one of the best chiasma structures in all of Scripture. There's like a statement of four terms and then a double reverse of those four terms in order. But you can't miss out on this little fun chiasmus too. It's definitely here, and they're stating things in a way that we do not state in our modern Western thought. They're definitely doubling up every single term, reversing the order of several of those in these chiasmus structures. And so I just want to identify it, show it to you. It's faith building, faith promoting, and the stuff that I have a fun time looking for. So hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, share this with some others. And otherwise, I hope this channel is a wealth of little Hebrew poetic parallel and chiasmus structures that you can use as you study the Book of Mormon. We'll see you. Bye. Chiasmus in the Book of Mormon supports the idea that Joseph Smith was a prophet because it's hard and not the way Western civilizations write. Joseph Smith was just 23 years old when he dictated the Book of Mormon. He only had a third-grade education. He daily worked a farm in Harmony, Pennsylvania for sustenance. He was a newlywed of just 2 years, and he had lost his first child just 9 months earlier. So ask yourself, what uneducated 23-year-old boy with a new wife wants to spend his time immersed in Scripture? Additionally, the Book of Mormon was dictated in just 65 to 75 working days at a pace of 3,000 to 4,500 words per day. There were no revisions to the dictation. Thus, every word making up the over 900 chiasmus and other Hebrew poetic parallel forms within the text had to be spoken in precise order. perfectly. Again, ask yourself, could an uneducated 23-year-old farm boy do this? No. Only a truly inspired prophet could do it.